Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. I am Samantha Graham with Renew NC at the Division of Community Revitalization. Also with us today is Sean Rowe, who will be handling the chat. As you have questions today, please put them in the chat and we will answer them all at the end. We also have Maggie, who is our Director of Housing.
Hi, everybody. My name is Maggie Botclon, and like Samantha said, I am the Director of Housing, so that includes oversight on the Renew NC Small Rental Rehabilitation Program that we're here to discuss. We also have Tisita Warren on our team who is here. Tisita, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I am Tisita Warren, and I am the multifamily housing lead. And I'm going to kick it over to Dan.
Hello, I am Dan Glisson, and I am the operations lead over the Small Rental Rehabilitation Program for Renew NC. Going to be going over this program with you guys today. And then I have, of course, erstwhile sidekick, Brianna Fett, who will be taking some notes for us and working with us throughout this program.
Thank you, Dan. So today we're going to go through kind of our Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery, CDBG-DR program at a high level, and then we'll get into our Small Rental Rehabilitation Program with Dan, and then we will have time for questions at the end. So the state of North Carolina was awarded $1.4 billion from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for Hurricane Helene recovery. $807 million of that was for single-family housing program, which launched in June of last year, and those applications closed January 31st. In mid-December, we launched our Small Rental Rehabilitation Program, which we're here to talk about today. Our funds help support the counties shaded there. The green counties are our HUD mid, where 80% of the funds need to be spent. The remaining 20% can be spent in the blue counties. HUD requires that at least 70% of the funds must benefit low to moderate income households and communities. We have an action plan on our website that we can link to in the chat with more details about how we are spending these funds. And I'll turn it over to Dan to talk about small rental.
All right, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. So going over the Small Rental Rehabilitation Program. So as you guys can see, it is part of the HUD grant, the portion of $191 million that was provided for multifamily housing programs. We have $57.4 million that has been allocated for the Small Rental Rehabilitation Program. Now, the activities, and it's an important note, are our intent is to increase the number of available affordable rental units in Western North Carolina. So, everything that we're doing here is from that lens. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. All right. So, who is this program for? The first thing I want to answer, right? Well, who is, the intended applicant for this program? It is not renters. This program is not for renters to apply. It is for property owners, for landlords who have rental properties that can be provided, for low income renters to rent. So this could be, duplexes, Airbnbs, one note to address is that property owners may submit one application for vacant properties with 1 to 4 units. So we'll see that later, that the 4 units is the limit on a particular application. So how can we apply? We've got our online portal available at renewnc.org. We got a mobile app that can be downloaded. Anyone can also call our contact center, the 888 number listed here, and you're going to see it again at the end of the slide presentation from Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then in person, we have 3 different intake centers, which you'll see are located in Marion, Asheville, and Boone, that are open Monday through Saturday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Next slide. All right, so what are the eligible areas? So we have 28 counties and 1 zip code in Mecklenburg, right? All of these are the eligible areas. If you saw them, of course, earlier, they were identified as the HUD identified most impacted and distressed areas, as well as the state identified most impacted and distressed areas. You'll see the difference in how important and how how it's important to note the prioritization that we will have based on those designations later on. But here are also listed our office areas in Boone, Marion, and Asheville. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So eligibility criteria. We're going to go over each one of these because these can be are very important to note. Applicants must meet all the following criteria. First of all, the applicant must own the damaged property, and the property must contain 1 to 4 units. If the property contains more than 4 units, it may be found to be ineligible, right? It will be found to be ineligible. The property has to have sustained damage from Hurricane Helene. Property must be located in a HUD or state identified most impacted or distressed county, as we saw on the map previously. This one is a key element that we want to go ahead and make sure is known, is all units must be vacant at the time of the application. So we will not be taking applications where we currently have a tenant in any one of the units. All of the units must be vacant. All owners must be U.S. citizens or legal permanent residents. The applicant must be current on property taxes. The applicant must be current on mortgage payments, and the applicant must not be subject to bankruptcy proceedings, which we will verify via a credit check. Let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. So prioritization, we talked earlier about that. Due to the capped resources, we are actually going to be prioritizing based on one of the following. So there's going to be certain items that we're going to do for priority. One is if the applicants own the property at the time of Helene. If you did not own the property at the time of the hurricane, you are still eligible. However, priority will go to those who own the property at the time of Helene. Applicants with properties located within the HUD identified most impacted and distressed zones will be prioritized over those in the state identified ones. Of course, applicants must have property sustained damage from Hurricane Helene. And this last note, the applicants whose property is located outside of the special flood hazard area. So that's also known as the 100-year floodplain. So we will be determining where the property is located. Of course, if it is within the 100-year floodplain, you are still eligible, but priority will be given to those properties that are outside of the special flood hazard area. And let's move on to the next slide. All right, so here is an overview of the applicant process. So I'm going to go ahead and go over the first 4 here on this slide, and then we're going to move on into the other slides, which, you know, where these are explained in more detail. So number 1 is you'll notice that it says applicant gathers documentation needed to apply, and then they submit the application. I want to reassure you guys that it's not necessarily the case. What we really want is for people to just go ahead and apply, because at that point, at the point of submitting the application, you will be assigned to a specialized case manager with a knowledge of all of the guidelines and policies and procedures of the Small Rental Rehabilitation Program. That case manager will then reach out to the applicant and request any missing documentation, go over those in detail, and ensure that everything is explained well. So don't hesitate to apply, even if not all documentation is gathered. At that point, all that documentation will go through an intake review, and we'll review that we have all of the documentation and it's all valid. And then it will go through an eligibility review, where we'll determine whether the property is at that point eligible. Once we've determined that, we'll move into our duplication of benefits and housing damage assessment. We're going to go ahead and review that on our next slide. So go ahead and, yep, there you go. So duplication of benefits. Very important to note. One thing that I want to stress to everyone is that this funding is determined by federal guidelines and regulations that it is funding of last resort. So that means that we will be performing, it supplements insurance and any other forms of disaster resistance, including FEMA. So when we are done with that eligibility review, the next step is to do that duplication of benefits review, where our specialists will, determine whether any financial assistance was provided from multiple sources for that same purpose, for the purpose of repair or replacing the home. And those, we will look for any of that is duplicative, and take that into account when we determine the award. Go ahead and go on the next slide. Okay, then we are going to perform a damage assessment. At that point, we're going to confirm the presence of remaining unrepaired storm damage resulting from Hurricane Helene, complete a Tier 2 environmental review checklist. What will happen is you will be assigned a specialist damage assessor who will be sent out to the property to review everything that's going on the property, to look over everything, take pictures and photos of all of that damage, and from that will come out our damage assessment or estimated cost of repair and damage repair verification. They're also going to review environmental mitigation requirements like lead-based paint, etc. Right, on the next slide. Okay, and we have our environmental review. Now, environmental review is conducted remotely. It's determined to determine potential to impact the environment. So it's actually a lot more thorough than one might imagine to be a regular environmental review. This is to abide by federal regulations. We conduct an environmental review prior to issuing any award to ensure the proposed activities do not have an adverse environmental or health effect. We will be contacting historical societies, tribal entities, etc. Any issues identified may be mitigated before or after the construction process if feasible, and properties of extraordinary site conditions may be deemed ineligible based on our environmental review. Next slide. All right, then we move into award and DOB gap collection. So you'll notice that there's a particular formula here that is noted that is utilized to calculate the award. First, we identify the estimated cost of repair, which again comes from our damage assessment. All potentially duplicative assistance, right? The DOB is determined. And we deduct any assistance that is determined to be duplicative. So here's a note. Applicants that are found to have a duplication of benefits gap will then be given the option to return the unused assistance to the program if the total DOB gap is less than the award amount, right? So the determination here is, if there is anything that is duplicative, it will have to be then paid back into the program, all right, in order to ensure that we are abiding by federal regulations. We will then apply the applicable award cap based on a number of units being served in the application. We're going to go over that in a bit. Okay. Then we will identify our pre-storm market value from the applicant's county records or other applicable source. We'll compare a determined award value to pre-storm market value to determine the award type. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. All right, so here's what we were talking earlier about the award cap, right? So the award caps for reconstruction, you'll notice, first of all, we have rehabilitation, which we are going to define as any repairs that need to be made. We've determined that we need to repair the home and that the costs of repairing that home will go into, are below those of our repair cap. Right, our current repair cap is $50,000 for a stick-built home, $25,000 for an MHU. If it goes above those amounts, we'll most likely move it into our next level up, which would be reconstruction. There are award caps for reconstruction, and they are based on the number of units that we're talking about in each particular property. So if you have a 1-unit property, then the award cap is $450,000. If it is a property that has 2 units, that award cap goes up to $750,000. If it is a property that has 3 units, that award cap goes up to 1.2 million. And if it has 4 units on one property, you're looking at a 1.5 million award cap. Okay. The other possibility, of course, is mobile home replacement. So, the unit that you're renting out is a mobile home, and we've determined that there's too much damage to repair. We're going to go ahead and replace that mobile home. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. So once we have determined the award and we have, all agreed on it and the agreements have been signed, we'll move into pre-construction. So there's some activities take place here in pre-construction, right? Once we have awarded, we're going to assign a general contractor that has been vetted and procured appropriately by the state. That general contractor will be assigned to the case. It will then that general contractor is going to survey and perform the design. They're going to be in touch with the property owner during each stage of this, of course. Going to determine a cost estimate, and that will all be provided, of course, to the program, because the program will be taking care of all of the costs. We'll then have a pre-construction meeting with the property owner where all of these items that have been determined by the general contractor will be discussed with the owner. Permitting will take place, and any utilities at that point that for that particular property should be disconnected at that point, so that we can go ahead and begin with construction. Go on to the next slide. Construction itself, that program assigned general contractor is going to execute the cost estimate. They're going to begin either rehabilitating the home, repairing it, right, or they're going to do the full reconstruction. All construction work, of course, must be approved via the cost estimate that was created earlier. There may be some items that they find in the middle of things, right, while they are working on the home, and they do a change order at that point, which will then be presented to all parties so they agree, hey, there's going to be an increase in that estimate. Again, these costs are covered up to the cap by the program. The activities are all subject to the award cap. Construction is completed using standard builder grade materials and regardless of pre-existing materials. The applicant requests for upgrades or modifications. Any upgrades or modifications not going to be considered. We're going to be going by the approved floor plans and discussion that is done with our general contractor and abiding by program guidelines. Now, this is an important piece that we need to go over. Once the construction is done and we've turned over the keys, the program doesn't end here. Okay, at this point, there is a compliance period. Okay, by agreeing to participate in the program and receive the assistance, as a property owner and landlord, what you are agreeing to is this compliance period. It is a time frame within where you are agreeing that these properties will be available for rent to low tenants. So income certification and third-party verification is completed at initial lease up and annually thereafter to ensure that the tenants that are being placed in these homes are low income. Income verification is based on source documentation such as pay stubs, tax returns, or benefit statements. May not rely on self-certification. You're agreeing that you, as the property owner, will be gathering this income documentation and data, and keeping accurate rent rolls and tenant income documentation. Okay, so by keeping that documentation, this is something that will be monitored by the program going forward. And move on to the next slide. The compliance period is to ensure that it is an affordable rental property for a minimum 10-year affordability period. So that compliance period is a 10-year affordability period. During that period, the leases executed for the program assisted units must include a program approved lease addendum, which we will provide to you to put into the lease. All units assisted by the program must be leased to tenants with household incomes at or below 80% of the area median income, right? Which of course, varies by county. We will assist you by providing you what those limits are for your particular county for a minimum duration of the 10-year compliance period. Rents charged by applicants may not exceed the high home rent limits as defined by HUD throughout the compliance period. And all leasing and occupancy practices must comply with HUD fair housing and equal opportunity requirements. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Okay, so in the event of a sale or transfer, right, if you end up selling or transferring the home during the affordability period, the use restrictions and applicable warranties must transfer with the property through a recorded deed restriction, land use covenant, or other HUD-approved mechanism. The use restrictions remain in place regardless of transfer, refinance, or payoff, unless released through foreclosure or transfer in lieu of foreclosure. So it is important because the state will be monitoring this compliance period. Moving on to the next slide. The owners must submit annual compliance reports to the Department of Community Revitalization, demonstrating adherence to program terms, including occupancy, rent, and income eligibility. So, again, you'll be keeping those rent rolls. You'll be responsible for keeping those and providing an annual report. The program will then conduct annual monitoring. And if the applicant is found out of compliance, the program will issue a written notice of deficiency, allowing 30 calendar days to cure the violation. All right. At this point, that is the program. I'm here providing my direct line as well as email address, which you're more than welcome to email if you have any questions. But when it comes to actual general questions or to apply for the program, I urge you to please utilize either the contact center, which the number is here, as well as you can also visit us at renewnc.org to apply online, as noted previously.
Yeah, thank you all for attending today. If a question does come up later, please email us. I will put my email in the chat and we can get it over to Dan. And we thank you all for joining us today. This will be on our website in the first week or so of February. And if you are on our newsletter list, you will receive it that way as well. So thank you for attending, and please feel free to email if something crosses your mind later. Have a great afternoon.